Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are thrilled that our grounds manager, Ian Jochems, who many of you know, has documented his recent seed collecting trip to Japan so he could share his experiences with us. And we've got a great virtual audience tonight. We've got about 50 people joining us, and we're psyched to be able to offer this program to those of you on island as well as those of you who are joining us from further away. It's a very tiny silver lining of our pandemic experience that we're now able to offer our programs virtually for people near and far. So we're thrilled to have all of you with us. Ian visited Japan in September of 2019. His trip was a collaboration with the Arnold and Morris Arboretums. So they collected seed of horticulturally important plants and brought the specimens back to Martha's Vineyard and to the respective participating gardens. These types of trips by our hort staff really follows the legacy of Polly herself. She was an avid plant explorer, and she always sought to push the boundaries of what she could grow on the island. She fostered relationships with friends visiting the Asian continent, as well as horticulturists based there, to obtain rare and special seeds from a climate that's similar to ours here on Martha's Vineyard. So we're psyched that Ian is going to take us on a virtual trip to Japan this evening. And if any of you have questions during the talk, if you don't already know how to do it, you can use the Q&A feature. You'll see it at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we'll try to answer some of the questions at the end of the lecture if we have time. And if anybody has a clarifying question, feel free to post questions during any time in the lecture. If it's something that it seems like it can wait, I might wait till the end to ask Ian. Or we might do a quick interlude to ask for clarification from Ian. So feel free to ask questions in that Q&A section at any time. And if you don't see it, just hover your mouse over the screen, or if you're on a mobile device, tap your screen and it should appear there at the bottom of your screen. So with that, Ian, I will turn it over to you.
All right, well, thank you, Anne. Thank you for helping out with all of this and dealing with all the technical stuff for me here. And thank you for everyone else that's joining us today. I'm sorry that we're not in the far barn doing this lecture, but this is an interesting new way of doing things, and hopefully we can maybe combine them in the future to be able to reach out to other people. So yeah, so today, I'm going to be giving a trip tour that we did in 2019 in September. I'm going to close my screen up here real quick, and we can get started. That way you can see the whole screen. So again, please ask questions if you have any, and we'll try to get to them by the end. Let's see here. Get this going. All right, so our trip started out we stayed on the main island of Honshu. And we started our trip in Tokyo, made our way down south to Shirahama. We made it to Wakayama, Mount Kanseyama, up to Toba, and then back up to Utsunomiya, Minakami, and Tochigi. So we're going to lead you kind of around that tour. Rough trip, round trip. It's supposedly saying it's about 1,800 kilometers. The train rides were about 3 hours or so, but we'll get to that in a bit here. So to start, our team that we went with, the official team was down in the right-hand picture here. And starting from the right is Tony Iola. He's from the Morris Arboretum, and he's the director of horticulture and curator there. And then to his left is Steve Schneider, and he's the director of operations at the Arnold Arboretum. And then to my left is Miniaki Ayazawa, and he is the professor at the University of Utsunomiya, and he's the head of the Laboratory of Forestry, Ecology, and Silviculture there. And then to his left is his grad student, Tatsuhiko Shibano, and we just called him Shibano because it was a lot easier to yell Shibano through the woods than Tatsuhiko. So it just didn't roll off the tongue as easily. So he's known and will be referred to as Shibano. but he's a grad student there, and he's graduating actually this year. Hopefully he graduated in May. And he focused on the Japanese 5-needle pines, and he was really, really looking forward to hopefully coming over here someday and looking at the white pines and some of the other 5-needle pines. And then a great surprise to the trip was a little addition of Keiko Santo, and Keiko was Polly Hill's unofficial Japanese granddaughter. And for those of you who may have been around here in the year 2000, you may have ran into her. She's also still lives through in some of our publications. She is the one who did the artwork designs that were the mice for some of our open field days and for some of our publications. So she's still there. She's still great. It was great to have her along because she not only could read and translate everything for us, but had a lot of the cultural things that she could explain to us as well. So it was great to have her join us through the trip. So when we started out, we all met up at the Tokyo train station, and we had just met Shibano and Miniaki there. And before we boarded our next train, one of the traditions is you have to get a bento box. And the bento boxes, they're amazing. This one little shop here sold several hundred different styles of it. And what I didn't realize is that everything was made the night before and is in these packages. So everything's incredibly fresh. It's all pretty much cold, but this was a cold pork and rice and with a little type of coleslaw for just a few dollars. And it's kind of a tradition that before you go on the long train rides, you stop at one of these bento stands and pick up a box and you'll take it with you on your trip. So we were heading, our first main travel was going from Tokyo all the way down to Wakayama. And to get there, we went from Tokyo to Shirahama on the bullet train. And when we ended up getting to the Wakayama field station, this was the town of Wakayama that's just a little south of Shirahama. And this picture over here on the left-hand side here, the large building in the distance here, that is the Hokkaido University field station, and they allow other universities to rent space and to use their facilities for other field research projects. So we were allowed to go there, but it was in this beautiful little mountain village. And one of the strange things that we kind of noticed later on is that in the back here, along the whole back, is a giant cement wall with a wire fence above it. And we ended up figuring out that I think it was because of landslides, to protect the village from landslides from that mountain behind it. So this here is the front of the field station, and very simple little place, but inside it was more set up like a traditional Japanese house. And this was our bedroom. So we had the tatami mats, and we would roll out our beds every night and sleep here. And we slept here for 3 nights, but it was absolutely fabulous. They treated us really great, and it was a great little field station to hop out of. This is what they would prepare for us. So they gave us lunches and dinners. And the first dinner we had there was a sushi dinner, make your own sushi rolls and things like that. So it was absolutely amazing. And we quickly learned that Shibano, he's from the western side of Japan, and he is from a side where you shouldn't leave any food on the table. So he quickly became our garbage disposal. And he would, once we were all done, he would pretty much take everything else that was on the table, load it into a bowl or a plate, and could just finish it all down in a matter of a couple minutes. So he cleaned up all of our meals for us, which was great. But this place was awesome. They treated us super well. And so where we were staying was down here in the lower right-hand corner. And Hokkaido University, Miniaki works closely with them. So he had gotten permission to go into the Hokkaido University. And this was an area that Todd went last year, in 2018, he went here. This area had been highly damaged by some storms, and so the road in this area was almost completely washed out in areas. And so Todd, when he went, wasn't able to get up as far as we were able to get. So we were able to drive a little further, which was nice, but then we still had to go on foot. So the first day, we parked up here at the red dot, and then we had to hike up into the mountains and up this valley and then up the side of the mountain here. And remember this opening here, because this opening will be in the next picture. It's a field that they harvested. The forestry department had logged all the cryptomeria off of it. And so they were doing now a regeneration study and how the flora and fauna interacted with each other in the forest regeneration. So I'm sorry, it's in another slide. So this is one of the pictures of the start of it. And let me see if I can play this. So this is just a little video, a quick one of the stream that we were near, which nice little start to it. But then it quickly turned into this horrible, horrible rainy day. And we got absolutely downpoured on, but we were at least smart from the trip the year before. They had gotten downpoured on for most of that trip. And so we actually got much smarter this year, and everyone invested in waterproof bags and these roll top bags. So we actually, all the equipment stayed dry, which is really nice, but we just absolutely got drenched, which was not as fun. But just moving up through the mountain here, it was just absolutely beautiful. You can see the stands of cryptomeria running through the back here. Those are all typically planted cryptomeria when they're all rowed out like that and limbed up. But this is that clearing that was on that map. And in this clearing, pretty much the only thing that was growing was Daphniephyllum humili and Illicium anisatum, the Japanese anise. And the reason for this, that these were the only things growing here, was that the deer, the roe deer, would just go through and just eat everything else down. But these plants are very high oils and they're very pungent smells. So the deer don't tend to mess with them. And so you could see that they were just really taking over and becoming the next generation forest here, which was a pretty thing to see, obviously. But into our first collection was Illicium anisatum, and this is the Japanese anise. So it's closely related to Illicium verum, which is the Chinese star anise, which is what people tend to cook with. This is actually one of our, this is the first collection we made, and this is the first one that's a new wild collection for us here at the Arboretum. So we do have this in our collection, but it's not wild collected. So we really want to focus on trying to get a wild representation of the species. So it's really great to get this into the collection. Here's Miniaki and Tony standing near it. Nice size plant. And then in this middle picture, you can kind of see these green, yellow seed pods in here. And that's what we were going for with this plant. The next one we got, and unfortunately, these are all stock photos, because at this point in time, we were getting so downpoured on that nobody wanted to take their cameras out to take a photo of anything that was going on. So unfortunately, we did not get any field photos of this plant. But this is one that I'm really, really, really excited to get into the collection, is Quercus acuta, the Japanese Evergreen Oak. And it should stay evergreen into Zone 7, which I'm super excited for. It would just be really great to have another evergreen tree here that's not necessarily a conifer. And then the really, really awesome thing about this is that this is part of the Cyclobalanopsis oaks. So the difference in this is that on the left here, this is the way most North American oaks have their acorns, where they're these overlapping shingles, almost like imbricate buds, imbricate shingles that overlap each other. The Cyclobalanopsis oaks, they form their outer shell in concentric rings. So you can get these just really cool different formations that I'm really, really looking forward to. It's just going to add another feel, another texture, and just another thing to look at on the tree. So really excited for this oak to grow here. The next collection we made when it stopped raining as bad on us was the Magnolia salicifolia. And I'm sorry, the oak is our first new complete collection. We do not have that one at all here, and it's our new, obviously, wild collection as well. The Magnolia salicifolia, we do have this in our collection, but it was another great collection for us to get some extra genetics to get some variability. So you can see here's the seed pod here, and then the seed is this nice amber orange reddish color seed on the inside here. And that seed coat that's on this is a chemical inhibitor. So that has to be completely removed, but also to get this through the USDA check, we have to get that, has to be completely removed as well. So that's work that we do later on in the lab. Here's the flower of this. So it's an early spring blooming flower before it even leaves out. Really nice, kind of delicate flower. Doesn't last super long, but it's going to be nice to have. We have one of those here on the collection right now. So then the next one that was a great collection to get is the Hydrangea Secokiana, and it's the Japanese oak leaf hydrangea. So it has a lot of similarities with our North American species, Hydrangea quercifolia. But the difference is it tends to be, in my opinion, a little more airy. You can see through the plant. As you can see, it's this large structure behind Steve here. And this is growing from at least 4 or 5 feet down below where he's standing. So you can see the plant overall is a pretty large plant, very airy, has the oak leaf shape to it. But the difference is instead of the panicle pyramidal shaped flower, it has a lace cap shaped flower with the infertile inflorescence around the outside and the fertile fluorescence on the interior that you can see the bees are going after. The one on the picture on the left is a garden origin Hydrangea Secokiana that we have growing in the playpen. If anyone wants to come look at it, it's a few years old in the playpen. And this is actually it flowering right now, currently. I took that picture a couple days ago. So really nice looking, but hopefully in the future we can get some of these wild collected ones out on the grounds as well. So the one thing we missed the first morning, but we got to catch the second morning, is the morning stretch. And it's kind of another Japanese tradition there that from elementary school age, everyone does a morning stretch to this soundtrack. And so we ended up joining them for the next 2 days doing the morning stretches, and it was a lot of fun, and they had a good time laughing at us trying to keep up with them doing it. So but it was a lot of fun. So the second day that we went out, we went over to this other green dot over this direction. So we worked our way up the valley, and then we, instead of taking these switchbacks, we ended up cutting up somewhere through here, I think, and made it over to this green dot area. And to start, our first collection of that day was Magnolia obovata, and it's the white bark magnolia. And we do have this one also in the collection right now, but we don't have a wild representative of it. So the one that we have in the collection is the Magnolia obovata Lydia, which is named after Polly's granddaughter. And this is the seed pod right now, a couple days ago. It's an incredible shape, these really awesome kind of spikes, almost like an unbow on a pine cone. I think these are stigmas. I'm not sure exactly. I think they're leftover stigmas, but I could be wrong on that. But then again, they start to form. The pod will turn a red color later on as it develops further, and then the pods will crack open at these seams, and the seed will be exposed. Again, it has that red-orange coat on it that has to get removed before we can transport that across back into the United States. Here's the flower. Absolutely amazing flower on this one. One of my favorite flowers personally, besides like beyond the eye. And then the fragrance of this flower is absolutely fantastic. It's kind of a sweet, peppery fragrance to it, and I just love it. And then a nice fall characteristic that these trees can have is that they get what's called a marcescent leaf. This one doesn't tend to hold out for the whole winter like a beech tree can do, or a young oak tree, but they do hang on for a while, and so it can give it that secondary seasonal characteristic, which is always a nice thing to have. So here we are scrambling up one of the mountains. I think Miniaki up there is looking down at his feet to make sure that there's not a snake at his feet. But this is a lot of our trekking was just, kind of semi off trail, semi trying to connect to trails, and going up quite a few steep faces to get to places. So we were on a mission here to get to some Stewartias, and this was, you know, our goal here was the Stewartia monadelpha, the Tall Stewartia or the Japanese Tall Stewartia, or the cinnamon Stewartia as well. And absolutely just beautiful bark there. That cinnamon color, that plated, where it flakes and peels back to sometimes this red, more maroon color. Just great, especially with that sunlight on it. So these were the Stewartias, and you can see that the one that I'm standing next to, obviously, but then there's also one in the background here. I think there's another one further back over here in the background. And these trees, we were on such a slope that they would kind of grow out sideways, and then they would do this kick up to the sun. And it made it interesting for obviously trying to pick the seeds. So Miniaki here and then Shibano, they both have their poles out. And these poles were made of fiberglass. The one that Shibano has, I think, is fiberglass or carbon fiber. Yeah, carbon fiber. And then the one that Miniaki has is a fiberglass one. And they could reach between, I want to say 60, almost like 60 and 70 feet up. And they were really, really lightweight. And so here's a picture of Miniaki reaching up into this Stewartia tree, and he's cutting limbs out of it, small portions of limbs that have seeds on it that we're spotting with binoculars and a laser pointer to point them out. And this is what those poles look like when they're all compacted, is they're just they accordion outwards, and they were made, from what we gather, they were made for utility pole work, and I think measuring utility lines through the forest and through certain areas. So they've converted them then by taping this bill hook on the end of it that's used for harvesting rice and different things. And they will get that thing razor sharp to the point where they can just get it up, hook it over a branch, and they can slice a branch the size of your thumb off of a tree like it's nothing. And it's the cut when that comes down is just perfect. Definitely something you had to be careful carrying and messing around with for sure. But they were a great tool to have. Here's Tony standing in front of another Stewartia. So again, they would just come out of these hillsides, and the path that we're on, I guess there was a bit of a path here, you know, it's only a few feet wide, 4 feet wide, and then it's just steep again right off the other side. So a lot of that was happening. Here's the flower of a Stewartia monadelpha, and then here's one of the seed pods here in the lower right corner that we collected. And one of the big differences beyond the bark color of this monadelpha from the Sciodopotis is the flower size. The flower size is much smaller, and same thing with the seed pod, it's much smaller, and the leaf is a little smaller as well. But the cinnamon bark is just incredible. You can even see over here, the roots on the wall are the same cinnamon color. So it's just awesome how it really is imparted through the whole plant. One of my other favorite collections that we made on this trip was the Rhododendron Araleoides. And troco means wheel, and dendron obviously tree. So it's the wheel tree, and Araleoides means it looks like an aralia. We have this in the collection, not wild collected, but we do have it. It's in the playpen if anybody wants to see it. This again is an evergreen. It's a semi-evergreen. If we have a really hard winter, it may lose its leaves. But usually it is evergreen here for us. It's a really rare tree to find. It's rare in the wild, and it's pretty hard to typically find in the industry, the nursery industry. But we do have one in the playpen. It's down in the 20s in the south area of the playpen if you want to look. Absolutely just kind of crazy little flower. It's an apetalous flower, meaning it doesn't have any petals really. And they just are these whorls going around in circles, again, meaning wheel, kind of referencing that. And then here's the seed pods when they're dried and they've dehessed, and they've sent out the little seeds that they carry. This seed pod actually looks quite a bit like the Elysium seed pod, but these are multiples versus an individual. And the kind of craziest adventure in this area that we got ourselves into was, again, getting back to an area that Todd had gone to in 2018, but unfortunately when they were there, the cones were not ripe for these trees. So this is the Sciodopotis verticilata, the Japanese umbrella pine. And we have several of these in our collection. We have 5 or 6 of them, but none of them are wild collected, unfortunately. They're all garden origin. So this was really, we were really excited to get this into the collection. And unfortunately, when Todd went there, like I said, the cones were not ripe yet. This unfortunately takes 18 months to ripen. So when he was there, it was just too early. But when we got there, it was like perfect timing for us. But where this is located, it's basically a ridge line, and on both sides it was 60 to 70 degree slopes. And I'm trying to help Tony get a diameter at breast height measurement of this tree, and just for him to get the measuring tape around the tree, he had to hand it down to me, and I'm only 3 feet or so, 4 feet away from him, and I am below his feet headwise. That's how steep this area was. So steep that when we started cutting the pine cone, the cones out of the tree, they were bouncing off the hill and going down, and we were losing them. So Miniaki and I ended up having to anchor ourselves on this hillside, and I'm sitting on my knee, on my right knee, and then my left leg is fully straight, and I'm standing on my foot. So again, that's just how steep it is. And as they would cut, they would yell at us, and they would bomb these big pine cones, I'm sorry, down at us. And luckily we did have our hard hats on. They did make us wear hard hats in this forest. But these pine cones were quite heavy, and they were bouncing. And so Miniaki and I were basically having to play catcher, trying to stop them from going down the hill. But we ended up doing our job, I guess, well enough that we made a great collection. Here's a bunch of seed that we were able to get from them later on when we cleaned it. But yeah, great collection. Really excited to have this one in the collection for us. So one of the great things that they also did for us at the field station is they gave us lunch every day. And so we would just get these little gourmet lunches with these like pork balls, nice rice, some fish stuff. And they would always give us a sausage cut up to look like a little octopus. They would add eyes and everything. So they were really fun. And I think they had a good time kind of messing around with us, but it was fun. So we were actually, we were sad when we left. The picture on the lower left is the kitchen crew and the cooks for us, and so we wanted to say bye to them. So we wanted to get a picture with them. And then the upper right one is more of the staff that is there. This is one of the Hokkaido University professors that runs the field station, so he kind of manages everybody that works there. And then the young woman in the blue shirt and yellow undershirt, she was one of the grad students, and we always felt so bad for her because every night we'd come back, she would be counting and measuring leaves coming out of big trash bags. And by about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, she would almost be done with it. And the next thing we know, a couple guys would come in from out of the field and would just dump another 10 or 12 bags of leaves on her, and she would have to sit there and just measure it. So that was her research project she was doing, and she was very, very determined, but all day long she would just sit there basically and measure leaves. So quite interesting. But it was a bummer to leave them. But on our way out of there, and we were going to be heading up to Toba next, but on the way there we had some 3-leaved rhododendrons that we were really looking to go after. And so we made a stop at Mount Kaseyama, and which has a little shrine, but once we got past the shrine area, we were into the woods again. And this lower right-hand corner is the 3-leaf rhododendron, the look that we were going for. We ended up finding them, and the 3 that we got, the two main ones we got are Rhododendron werechiae, which is new completely to our collection, and Rhododendron reticulatum. And then we got the hybrid between the two. And we're not exactly sure what the flower color of the hybrid is going to be. We think it's going to be on the kind of pinky purple side of things. And then the leaf time and the flower time is going to be a little different, and basically kind of in between the two of them. So the reticulatum blooms very early, as you can see, prior to the leaves really emerging completely. And the werechiae pretty much blooms when the leaves have pretty much fully emerged already. So it's abnormal for these to be able to cross, but there must be certain reticulatums that bloom late enough and certain werechiae that bloom early enough where there is a cross that occurs. So we did collect the cross, And hopefully we'll see in a few years what that can give us from that. Really excited on that one. So this is the bottom dot here is Mount Kaseneyama. And from there, we worked our way up to Toba. And Toba is a fishing village that's well known for its oysters, shellfish, and black pearls. And when we got there, it was a religious holiday. And Tony had the biggest room. So as soon as we got into the rooms, we started spreading out all the seeds that we had collected to start drying things out. You don't want things to mold. So every night we would kind of air stuff out, spread things out. Whoever had the biggest room would kind of get taken over. So we did that in Tony's room. And then because it was this holiday weekend, the meals were preset, planned, kind of 5-course meal thing. And it was really amazing. We got some great sushi, some great beef, and veggies that we boiled in our own little cooker pots in front of us. But then we also did get some very interesting extra things like the scallop up here that was barely steamed and the raw sea snail here. And Tony and Steve, I think, were not able to get the sea snail down. I don't think they even tried. I did eat the sea snail. It was quite interesting. It wasn't bad though. It was worth the experience. But another tradition that we did not know is the bottom left corner picture is that at these hotels, it's kind of tradition and normal for the hotel. They provide the like leisure wear. And so everybody in the hotel besides the 3 of us from America were wearing the leisure wear. But it was fine. Nobody gave us a hard time over it. So the main reason that we were in Toba was that we were trying to get over to this island here in the upper left picture is Shugashima Island. And Shugashima Island is named the American name for it, or the English name for it is Serpentine Island, for the serpentine rock that is harvested from there. So we took a ferry. This is Tony and Steve. We're on the ferry headed over to Shugashima. And when we got there, this is the billboard at the kind of the main dock. So we docked down here in the lower left corner, and then we made our way up this white trail up into this brown circle here. And we were going after one specific rhododendron here and a specific Enkianthus. It's a completely forested island. The one thing on this island that was a bummer in the back of it was a giant quarry. And the quarry, unfortunately, the town of Toba, they were in litigation because they're trying to get them to clean it up and stop the invasive species because they've been finding more and more invasive species, unfortunately, getting into the native habitat here. And they're trying to stop that. But there were fun signs like these falling rock signs. And then this is kind of the little village area, a part of it leading out of the town. And it was kind of strange to see these little gardens that were so barricaded with anything that they could find. There was roofing, there's netting from the ocean, there's I think this is like a laundry basket, there's an old door laid down here. And we didn't really understand why they were doing this. And as we were hiking a little further, an older woman stopped and was kind of concerned and was talking to Miniaki and Shibano, and they came to us later and told us that she was warning us not to go up the mountain because of the wild boars that are on this island. And the reason that we quickly figured out, the reason that they're doing this then is that if they don't barricade their areas off like this, the boars will just get in and destroy everything they have. And it's also really dangerous to them to come outside of their home. If the boars are in their area, they can get attacked by them. So she was warning us not to go up because of the boars. And Shibano and I, at one point, were ahead of the group, and we did run into a boar, and it luckily didn't want anything to do with us and just turned tail and ran the other way. But it definitely scared Shibano and I a little bit. So we waited for everybody else to catch up at that point. But we ended up getting almost to the top of this mountain to make our collections. Nobody had been up there in a while, so the trails were heavily filled in, and there was lots of spiders. And Miniaki always was going first because he was scared of the snakes and things, and you couldn't see your feet at all. But then every once in a while it did open up to this, and this shiny leaf here in front of Shibano's face, this is one of the plants we were going for. That is the Rhododendron sanctum, the shrine azalea. And so the bottom right corner is the picture, and you can see the little seed pods at the tips of these. And so we were able to collect this, and this is an amazing azalea. Nice glossy leaf, amazing color. It's another one of the 3-leafed azaleas. So we collected, I think, a total of 4 of the 3-leafed azaleas, which was great to add to the collection. We do have this in the collection already, but it's nice to get more genetics. And then we got this Enkianthus periolatus, the White Enkianthus, which the left-hand photo is the one in bloom in the playpen. And then the others are from another bloom in the playpen. And then this is the photo. The big one is a photo from Japan. Really great little plant, really beautiful white flower. And then it has this really nice red eyeliner on the edge of the leaf that gives it just a two-tone appearance. And usually the new branches on this and the petioles of the leaves are red as well. And they'll fade with time, but it gives, again, a nice different color appearance to the plant. Another great thing about being in Toba was that it has the Issei Jingu Shrine, which is the #1 most sacred shrine in all of Japan. The emperor's sister lives here. So the tree that we're standing in front of is a cryptomeria tree that's several hundred years old. And the bark is usually very rough, like above our heads, but the lower section it's a sacred tree, so everyone rubs it. And so the bottom section had been rubbed basically completely smooth. But it was really a great time. And again, because it was a religious holiday, it was quite busy there, but absolutely beautiful. So after Toba, we made our way all the way back up to Utsunomiya and went to the university there to start unloading seed. But when we got there, Shibano and Miniaki wanted to take us out for some gyozas. Utsunomiya was an old military base, and so they brought gyozas back from China when they were in China, doing, unfortunately, war in China. So they ended up bringing it back, and Utsunomiya is kind of now known for being the gyoza center of Japan. And so this place that they took us to had 5 different gyoza shops that serviced one seating area. So we had our fills of gyozas that night. And here's Steve and Tony, obviously. Really fun though. So here we are. This is the process where we're starting to clean the seed. And this is when Keiko joined us. And so our first day out, from here, we went to Minakami. And this was the Nihon University Forest at Minakami. And this was probably one of the most diverse forests that we got into. We made the most number of collections here. Lots of new ones to the Arboretum being first wild collected, which is great. One of them here is Carpinus laxiflora. It's a loose flower hornbeam. Nothing overly special, but it's just going to be a nice addition to the collection, and just kind of a cool, almost looking like, hops, type of fluorescence there. Another one I'm really happy and excited about, because we have one in the collection, but it's not doing well, is Lindera praecox. And most Linderas, the seeds are, about the size of a pea or so, but this one, it's about the size of a quarter, really glossy, single seed inside of there. Great fall yellow color, a very, spice bush smell to it. So the deer shouldn't deal with this one. You can put this one in the shade and it should get a really nice yellow fall color as well still. So it will be a great landscape plant, hopefully for the future for us here at the Arboretum, and then hopefully even to be able to get to people as well. One of the maples that we collected is Maple Acer Nikkoensis, the Nikko Maple. This is part of the 3-leaf maple group. So if anyone knows box elders, Acer negundo, things like that, it's kind of related with that group. So you get these 3 almost individualized leaves per section leaflet. But nice maple, amazing fall colors. So nice addition. And this is a new one to our collection. We do not have this one at all, and we do not have this one even from a wild collection yet. So it's great to get this. One of my other favorite collections we made was this hydrangea serrata variety Yesoensis, the Yesoensis Mountain Hydrangea. And Yesoensis means from Hokkaido, Japan. So that is the translation for that. But it had this amazing blue. One of them, or a few of them we found, had more of a kind of a bleached out green color to it. like in this lower left picture, but this was the real star that we found, had this really amazing true blue color. And we got seed off this plant, so hopefully we can get some of these growing. And I know we do have these growing right now in the greenhouse. Another great maple we got is the Acer Siboldiana, the Siebold's maple. A really fun one. I like this one because the Samaras, these helicopter seeds, they sit 180 degrees opposed to each other. I just kind of like that appearance to them. Sometimes the 45s, you don't necessarily see them as much, I feel like, as this. But then again, this great fall color. Kind of looks like a japonica or a palmatum as well. And then this is Acer nipponicum that we were going, the Nippon Maple. And this one, they were worried about that it might seed out a little early and that the seeds might start coming down a little earlier than we got there. So they went and put out what are called these seed traps. And what they are is these nets that basically you kind of put them out around the drip line of the tree, and you're hoping that those Samaras, those helicopters, when they come down, that a few of them will find their way into these nets. And it's important to keep them from touching the ground, because as soon as they touch the ground, there's chances for rodents, insects, fungus, just all sorts of different things to start causing havoc to that seed. So if you can catch a few of them in these nets, it just can help give you better odds of getting a good, viable seed. But Shibano, with his long pole up there, he was able to actually get us some really nice branches down that had a lot of seed on them, seed set. And so we've got these good collection of these as well. Another little great one is Sciodopotis filbrata, the Hiba arborvitae. Nice little white underside to this. This is the underside of the needles. Really great little color. Here's Shibano risking his life trying to climb out on this one to get us a sample of it, which he's crazy, but he's young and immortal with his hook on his back at the same time. Another great one. So at the beginning, you saw the field of Daphniephyllum humili. This is a new one that's Daphniephyllum macropodum variety humili, which is the dwarf version of it. So this is as tall as it gets. And it, unfortunately, sorry, the picture on the right is a little blurry. It gets this really nice, almost blueberry with even a bloom, that kind of white powdery substance on the outside of it. Really cool, single seed. But I could really see this plant being used in just a large massing of it with, you know, a giant pine tree trunk coming up out of it, or even, you know, Stewartias growing out of it. I just think this could be a really cool look. And the deer don't tend to eat this, and it kind of has a rhododendron appearance. So I think you could maybe play that as a possibility in the landscape in the future. Give you that rhododendron feel, but not actually have a rhodie. So one of the crazy things is that Miniaki and Shibano did always have bear bells on, and they were always kind of yelling out to bears, but we never saw one until this point in time. And let me see if I can play this video. Let's see. So Miniaki's rattling his bell. And unfortunately, that's us running away, because we quickly realized that there was a baby up to our left. And so we did not want to get between the mom and the baby. So we quickly all scattered backwards, let mom and baby get back together, and we let them go on their way. But it was pretty cool to be able to see it. This is a Japanese black bear. And so this is a mother, and moms get about 45 to 60 pounds at full size. But I guess they are very, very aggressive, and they do kill, I guess, a few people every year. Because they're smaller, I think they're more aggressive. But our last day of collecting, we managed to get out a little bit northeast of Utsunomiya into the Tochigi Prefecture forest. And this is where we kind of got back to, again, Polly's heritage of the Stewartia pseudocamellia, the Japanese Stewartias. So we got into a great grove of these. Todd and them were looking for them the year before. They found, I think, one tree in an area, but I don't think it had fruit. So this was really great. Up in the right-hand picture here, this is a nice seed pod right here of Stewartia. And we were able to find some really nice ripe fruit from these. But they've got a great, almost sycamore mottled bark. Really awesome. And according to Todd, our previous curator, he had done some research on Stewartias, and he thought that, and we need to look into this further, that most Stewartia pseudocamellia genetics that are in the US, either in gardens or in production, are all from Korea, which certain groups are thinking that there should be a subset of Stewartia pseudocamellia subgroup Quercus, that they're genetically different enough. But so we do not have any wild genetics here. So we did get our first wild genetics, but this is also possibly the first wild genetics of true Japanese Stewartia into the US. But we're not 100% sure about that, but so we're looking into that a little further. Hopefully we'll find out, but it'd be pretty exciting if it was. Another one of our last maples we collected is the Acer diabolicum, which was very diabolic. It's the horned or deviled maple. And what you don't see is that these samaras are covered in a very fine, almost fiberglass hair. And if you touch these without gloves on, it feels like you've been handling fiberglass and you will itch for hours. And Keiko made the mistake of starting to clean these on the way home after collecting them and didn't put on latex gloves, and her arms, her hands, and she even inhaled some of the hairs from breaking them, and she was itching the rest of the night from this one. But really cool. So kind of excited because we have the Rhododendron sanctum, and we now, which is the shrine azalea, and now we kind of have the devil maple, so we can kind of have this good and evil battle going on maybe together, which is kind of a fun setup on here. And then one of our last rhododendron collections we made are these two 5-leaved azaleas, Rhododendron quencifolium and Rhododendron pentaphyllum. They both mean 5-leaved, and but the main difference is that the quencifolium, the cork azalea, you can see that the leaf has a bit of a hair, a pubescence around it, where the pentaphyllum is completely smooth. And this kind of runs true then through the plant as well, where the quencifolium, the cork azalea, the bark is very rough, very corky, and the pentaphyllum is very smooth, almost like an Enkianthus or a Coralopsis. But then the flowers are different. And this is one of those, again, where we were not able to find hybrids between the two because they bloom at completely different times. So they don't have the ability to hybridize with each other in the same area. So there's one thought of taking you would save pollen from pentaphyllum and you could then put it on quencifolium and get a hybrid from that. But it would require you to store the pollen, in a refrigerator and that type of stuff, which is doable, but hasn't been done here at the Arboretum at least yet. And then our final collection, again, back to poly, is the Cornus Cusa, the flowering dogwood. And Shibano's really laying it out for us here on the last day. He's climbed up this tree, this wind-blown Cusa, and he's getting the fruits. And you can see on this branch on the right here, these fruit that are sitting on the top, these little round balls, but unfortunately none of those were ripe. So, but we did find enough ripe fruit and made a collection. So hopefully we can get these into it, because again, we have a whole dogwood alley here at the Arboretum, but none of those are wild collected dogwoods, or some of the origins may be unknown. So this will be our first truly wild collected flowering dogwood. So pretty exciting for that. So then we had to spend 2 days in the lab doing our cleaning. The lower right-hand picture is the hydrangea serrata. And you can see that fine powdery tan dust that's there. That is the seed. So we have to clean everything off besides the seed. And so for the magnolias that are on the lower left corner, all these red coats have to be taken off and they have to get down to just this black little bead. All the maples have to have their wings taken off and have to be, thoroughly checked through. The oaks have to be decapped. Just everything. We cannot have a single piece of chaff really or plant material that's not the seed come through. Gets to be very difficult. And so then they get packaged up very neatly and all labeled, and we have everything labeled and packaged in 3s. So these are the same 3 plants in this upper left picture. It's the same plant, but it's in 3 different packages, evenly distributed. And then we packed up 3 different boxes with 1 complete set in each box. And then each box gets shipped And 2 of those boxes, they get shipped with these green and yellow labels, which are the U.S. Department of Agriculture inspection and quarantine labels. And you have to apply for these. And we sent 2 of our boxes through New York and 1 of them through New Jersey to different offices, because if they find one bug or they find one thing they don't like about your collection, they can burn the entire collection and incinerate it and just get rid of it, because they won't risk allowing a bug in. So the oaks, acorns were a really big risk to take back. So we made sure that those were actually only in 1 of the packages, so that if those failed, they would only burn 1 of our packages and the other 2 would hopefully make it through. And we also put them through different inspection agencies, because we wanted to make sure that if somebody's just having a bad day at one of those, that you don't get held up or don't get messed up for that reason. But lucky to say, everything did make it through. We were able to get them all home. And so the roundup facts of the trip was that we had 30 different samples collected, 16 different genera, 28 different species, 15 species new to the Arboretum, 1 species of new genetics, hopefully, to North America. We hiked about 40 miles total in about 6 field days, which was about a little under 7 miles a day. And then this is what's growing now. So sorry, they're a little sun bleached out, these photos. It was bright the other day when I took them. But so the left-hand picture is the hydrangea serrata variety Yesoensis. So this is 8 months after the trip roughly, and we already have plants that are this big. The bottom right picture is several different rhododendrons, and the top right picture is an alyssium. So it's really great to see how these collections are coming along. And anybody who is at the Arboretum, sometimes you may see numbers on collection tags. So this number here on this tag, this PCC 19 HON 001, this is the Plant Collectors Consortium 2009, year of 2019, Honshu, and it's the first plant collected of that trip. So if you're ever looking at them, you can kind of figure out what that means there. A little bit of Japanese symbolism. So I wanted to take everywhere I found a ginkgo leaf picture. So there's just a few like manhole covers, road barriers, buildings, sidewalks, things like that. And then anytime you're at a Japanese post office, these trees will be planted out front, because these are the symbol for a post office. And the reason for it is that the leaf, you can scratch it and it will oxidize and you can see the lettering and it will stay like that. So people would write notes back in the day, and so it became the symbol of the post office. So our future trips that we're looking to go for, if we can get out eventually, is we're looking to get all the abies of North America, which is about 10 different species there. We're going to look to continue collecting through the southeastern part of the US. And we're hoping to get on some more international trips and maybe 1 more to Japan, hopefully. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we will now start with the question and answer portion. I think, let's see if Anne comes back here. Let's see, she's coming in. Great.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
All right, so we've got a few questions, and folks, if you have any questions, keep typing them in and we'll get to them. So actually, one question about something that you just mentioned is, what is the common name of abies? What plant is that?
That's the fir, so the fir species.
Okay, so that's a fir tree, okay.
Yeah.
So how was it decided which species you would focus on collecting during the trip?
So the curators are the ones who kind of work on that stuff. And they will assess the collection that we have, and they'll assess, we have a heavy rhododendron collection, Stewartia collection. We have certain species that we, really kind of focus on here at the Arboretum. And so they'll assess that collection and look for things that they know are native to certain areas, that we know we're going. And then what we do is we form one large list of, the 3 different institutes form their list, and then we bring the list together and see where our overlap is. And we also then incorporate Miniaki and his associates with the list, and they'll go through it and they'll tell us, yes, we can get this, no, we can't get this, or we know where to at least look. they'll go out and do even pre-scouting for us, which is great. So they do a lot of legwork prior to us getting there, so that when we get there, we know we have a pretty good chance of getting to what we're looking for. One of the main reasons that we go is we're learning about also the environment in which they grow. So it teaches us then how best to grow them here in the Arboretum. What environment, what cultural practices we can do for them.
All right, well, that ties in perfectly with the next question. What did you learn about the conditions the Stewartias and some of the other species were growing in their native environment, about how to help them thrive in their new home on the other side of the world on the PHA grounds?
Well, luckily we do have quite a similar, environment here. The one big difference we have is we're definitely a much sandier environment. They definitely had a better soil base to their area, but again, the pH, a lot of that stuff is very similar to what we're dealing with here. So definitely some of the things are increase your organics. Understory planting, I think, they definitely grew in a lot of areas with understory, like the Stewartia pseudocamellia. That was all Scilla, which is a Japanese bamboo grass. So I think they like to have their roots shaded a little bit and not getting too hot, because they do have kind of a fibrous root, kind of like some rhododendrons. But yeah, so it just kind of taught us about those things. Obviously, they're an understory tree in a lot of areas, but they will get out eventually and get into the sunlight. So.
All right, our next question is, where did Polly get her Stewartia pseudocamellia seed? Wouldn't it have come from Japan?
So some of it is from just cultivars or other gardens that she received her stock from, seeds, and then some of it is from Rokujo, but unfortunately some of those documents aren't there. So when I look things up, the origin of the seed, like where Rokujo got the seed from, was not there. He didn't list where he got it from. And then some of the stuff that Rokujo sent was of garden origin. He would collect it from people's gardens, their homes, things like that in Japan. So yeah, unfortunately, some of it's not wild collected.
Okay.
Or we're not sure, sorry.
All right.
No guarantee.
Cliff is wondering, what was the name of the post office tree?
I do not remember. That's one I do not. That was the end of our second day of lab work, and we were shipping the boxes, and it took us 2 hours, I think, roughly an hour and a half or so, to get those boxes shipped. Sorry to say, all we wanted at that point was to go get a beer. So I honestly don't remember. Yeah.
But that's something that we could send.
Oh yeah, we can look it up. I can reach out. I can reach out to Keiko and find out.
All right, we can send that to our participants post webinar.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you learn about the conditions the Stewartias and some of the other species were growing in their native environment? Oh no, I already read that one.
Oh yeah, kind of.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked a lot about trees that were growing on steep slopes. So is this an environmental condition that's beneficial to the trees, or have they adapted to grow in a less than ideal environment because that's the quality of their natural habitat there?
Yeah, I mean, that's just their natural habitat. They would grow if it was flat, or they'd grow if it was steep. As long as they can anchor in, they can get going. And there's enough soil there to let them root in and really hold, even when it got rocky at times. So yeah, it's just their native habitat. I'm sure, we were finding better fruit set on trees that had a southern facing slope because they got more sun. Found better seed set on trees that had their canopy a little bit more in the sun than not in the sun. So we would try to focus on those areas. But that was more for us to try to be just as productive as possible. and not wasting our time, unfortunately, as much on north sides of slopes where it might not as be prolific.
Okay. So can you talk about some of the specimens grown from your collecting trip that are doing particularly well? So are any of them mature enough to be planted out and growing on the Arboretum grounds already?
So I mean, those hydrangeas, the serratas, those will be ready next season for sure. We can probably plant some of those out next spring or just shortly after spring. I would imagine from Todd's trip, I haven't quite looked yet, but I do know he's got a bunch of small Enkianthus that are, about 6 to 12 inches tall. So things will start coming along here. A few years ago, we did a big push and got a bunch of stuff from a 2007 trip and 2006 and 2007 trip to Japan that Tom and Tim had taken at different times. So we do have a lot of stuff out from those trips. And we're getting a lot of stuff out from our Georgia trips, our Southeast US trips, things like that. But we're definitely, it'll be next year, the start of things will really start coming out for sure.
Okay. Can you explain the difference between a variety and a cultivar, and how does this relate to the collecting you do in natural areas like you did on this trip?
Well, cultivars are, typically hybridized, or they're highly selected for and bred for certain reasons. And then a cultivar will have a name, typically either patented or trademarked onto it, and they'll be sold that way, and typically you'll get a royalty for that. But it's kind of your nursery. Your nursery plants are mainly cultivars and things like that. Now, varieties like the hydrangea serrata variety Yesoensis is that it's a hydrangea serrata, but it's a variety of it. It's slightly genetically different based. Sometimes it can be, I think it has to be genetically different, but also sometimes it'll be geographically isolated. Like if it's growing on some random remote island and it was geographically separated, thousands of years ago type situation, that's more of a variety of a plant. So it's not a cultivar of that. So somebody could then make a cultivar out of that plant if they hybridized it or just even wanted to select it. We could just select for one, like Polly did when she would get seeds. She would grow them and then she would look at them and she could select one. So if we get a different color, a brighter blue or something like that, we could always name it, Polly Blue or something. Who knows? But we could name it and it would then become a cultivar.
Okay, so a variety is a naturally occurring variation in some characteristic of the plant, whereas a cultivar is a characteristic that's bred in a garden environment.
Typically, yeah.
Okay. So on your trip, you weren't encountering cultivars. You were encountering straight species and some varieties.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for. We want to have that species representative so that if research associates or people want to come and look at what we have, we can show them a true species representation of that plant.
Okay, so next question. Did you get a sense of what the attitude toward conservation of native species in Japan is like? Is this something there's a lot of cultural and financial support for? How did you find your Japanese guides, and were they sponsored by a local public garden or compensated by a university for the work they did helping you with your expedition?
So Miniaki and Shibano, they worked with Utsunomiya University, so they did not get paid for this at all. So we paid for all their hotels, all their food, all their expenses, but they kind of do it out of the kindness of their heart. They are as into it as we are. So they really enjoy getting out into the woods and doing this. Plus, he's researching and doing other things when he's out there for his own work. So Shibano, if you ever ask him to go out in the woods and look at something, he would be the first one in the truck and going for it. So yeah, but yes, the university, I think they're kind of just paid through the university a little bit, but their university does not have a whole lot of funding, unfortunately. The state, that's one of the problems. There's definitely a cultural respect for nature, and they do a lot of forestry work. Most of the cryptomeria there is all planted cryptomeria for logging forestry, and they're very, very heavy into forestry and conservation of forestry. But unfortunately, the funding for a lot of the true native conservation is not there. They don't get funding to go to conferences. They don't get funding. They barely get funding to do their schooling and their programs. So it's unfortunate in that part. But yeah, working with them was amazing. Obviously, they were just fantastic. Translated, they could speak very good English. Translated a lot of stuff. Explained a lot of stuff to us. Had great Japanese botany guides that we were able to work with them with and stuff. So yeah, but unfortunately, the funding is just not there as much as it needs to be. But.
So basically, they're horticultural enthusiasts that are volunteering their time to this project.
Yeah, basically. You know, and it's the same thing kind of like when we go to the Ozarks and we work with Theo Witzel, the state botanist there. I mean, he's kind of doing it on botany time, but kind of also partially just doing it to be with us and things like that and be part of the exploration. It means a lot to them to get their names in, the research and to be part of it and to have their name in it. It means a lot to them. So, which is good.
Aside from university gardens, are public gardens a thing in Japan?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of gardens there. Yeah.
Okay.
Moss gardens, all sorts of things. Yeah, that's where you see it mostly. And they did have parks and stuff like that for sure.
The last question. Nope, couple more questions. Okay, how did you decide what seeds you want to collect?
I kind of went back to that first question of, we kind of the curators evaluate their gardens and look for holes in the gardens, things that they have but don't necessarily have wild species of, or just don't have it all in the collection. And so they'll make a list. We combine our lists, we isolate, figure out where our lists overlap, and we focus on those first. And then we get, there's always, no matter how focused your list is, when you have 5 plants people or 6 plants people in the woods together, it's hard to walk by certain things and not collect it. So that does happen, but you want to have a focused list so that you can try to stay on point as much as possible. So yeah.
Okay, we have a question. Do you worry about importing any plants that will later become invasives because they're not native to the US or this climate?
Yeah, we do. And there's lots of things that we saw there that we did not collect because we either know the potential of the invasiveness of the plant or we fear the potential invasiveness of the plant. But then we do, the Arnold Arboretum has a process that they look through. I think it's like a 13 or 9 or 10 step thing where they go through a process and you answer kind of these yes, no questions, and it kind of gives you a bit of a rubric to make a decision on whether you should keep something or not. But then when we have something in the collection, then we will also observe it. And if we start to see something that starts to spread or starts to look like it can become a problem, we will deal with that right away then. We've taken out all of our pear trees. We've dismantled all of our black locust trees. So we try to do that as much as possible.
So really following the tradition of Polly Hill, you're experimenting.
Yeah.
You're trying out different species. You're seeing what thrives in this environment, which is a similar climate to Japan.
Yep.
You're seeing what tends to be more invasive and what isn't. And you're kind of making curatorial decisions from there. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I think this is the last question. Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration between PHA, the Morris, and the Arnold Arboretum? How does it work when it comes to dividing up seed among the different institutions? And if one organization has germination failure, do you share seedlings?
Yeah. So that's one of the great reasons we do what we do. You know, we have a great relationship with the Arnold and with the Morris Arboretum. We've worked with these guys a lot in the past, but you know, I went to the Ozarks with Tony and Michael Dosman and those guys and stuff. So we have a great long-term relationship. But one of the best things about it is the fact that if we will share seed, and if one person's greenhouse has a complete failure, like over the winter, your heating systems or something happens and you end up losing an entire greenhouse, the other two institutes still have plants going, and we can very easily then restock the other institute. And so that's one of the things, is it becomes a safety net. Again, not having all your eggs in one basket, we spread everything out. We may find in the future too, as we plant things out on the grounds, that certain things don't live here, or certain things don't live in Boston. And so they'll just give us the rest of what they have, because instead of killing them, we can keep them and we can grow them. So there's been a lot of things like that where if they can't grow something up at the Arnold, or we can't grow something here because of our environment, then we'll just trade them and hand them off. But yeah, it's a security insurance policy basically for the plants. So everybody has them, and we'll grow way more than we'll ever plant. And one reason is to make sure that we get something out on the grounds and it survives. And B is for restocking purposes to the other institutes if we have to, or other institutes that weren't on the trip. Eventually, if everyone has these things growing and they're growing good, then we can start actually supplying other institutes with plants as well, live material or seeds in the future, or cuttings. But yeah, it's a really good insurance policy to have.
Excellent. All right, so that's it for our questions. Do you have any final words about the importance of this kind of seed collecting expedition and these types of collaborations between organizations?
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, it's a great thing. It's unfortunately, it's something that is, you know, it's not as commonplace as it used to be, and it's unfortunate for that. It's a great way of being able to go after species of concern, species that are endangered, like the Ozarks. We've gone after maple leaf oaks, things like that, where there's only about 200 known trees left in the wild. And then hopefully in the future, we can help restock and we can resupply Theo with plants that we've helped grow here. You know, we can do the same thing. So it's a great way to ex situ conservation of plants where, you know, heaven forbid, wildfire or logging or, you know, just certain things happen in certain areas of the world. You know, we have these plants preserved for hopefully a long time in ex situ conservation, and eventually you can get them back into conservation in their native ranges possibly. So yeah, it's really important, and hopefully people can help support it, because it is unfortunately a thing that's not as commonplace.
All right, thank you, Ian. Thank you for talking to us about this and for all the important work you do on these plant expeditions and all this in situ conservation work that you do.
Yeah.
If anyone has follow-up questions that you think of after the fact, feel free to email info@polyhillarboretum.org. And eventually we will have this recording available on our YouTube channel for anyone who might have missed it. So we'll send that out in our email newsletter, and you can feel free to share it with any friends and family that you think might be interested. So thank you, Ian, for sharing your important conservation work with us.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
And I hope you all have a wonderful evening.